Alright, so this is a work for September 15th for 7th grade. What we're going to do, we're going to do the same thing that we did for the assignment yesterday, and that is I do 3 examples, and then each example has a matching problem below. Alright, so first we're going to start at number 1. Jake buys 7.3 pounds of chicken, and each pound of chicken is $1.09. He also purchases a pack of hot dogs that cost $5.95. How much did Jake spend? So we're going to think about it like this. We're going to get all the chicken numbers together. So 7.3 has to do with chicken, and also this $1.09 has to do with chicken. And we're going to get all the hot dog numbers together, and the only hot dog number is right here. So I'm going to come up with a little formula that'll show us what we need to do. So how much he spends, or S for spends, is going to be the chicken, how many pounds of chicken times the price per pound, and then we're going to have to add in the hot dogs. So what it would look like is this: 7.3 times 1.09 plus $5.95. So that's how we would write out a formula. Another way we could draw this out is we know how many pounds of chicken do we need. We need 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But then we also have this little one, this 0.3. So I'm going to put a little star by this one because we're going to have to do something special for that one. So each pound of chicken is going to cost us $1.09. So I'm going to fill that in so you can show your work. But for this one, since we don't have a whole, we're just going to have to multiply it out. It's going to be 0.3 times 1.09. So I'm going to box that. 3 times 100, 0, 9. So what I'm going to be left with is 270. 0 and, or sorry, that's not right. What I'm going to be left with is 327. So it's going to come out to 327, but since I'm multiplying 0.3 times 109, I have 3 numbers behind the decimal. And since I'm using cents, dollars and cents, I know that this 7 wouldn't really exist. But this 7 would make this 3 round up, so I'd really be closer. So I'd really be closer to 33 cents. So I'm just going to fill in this box as 0.33 for 33 cents. So I can either multiply by 7 and then add the 33 cents, or I can just do this formula. 7.3 times 1.09. So I'm going to do the box. So we're going to break down 7.3 by doing 70 and 3. We're going to break down 1.09 by doing 100, 0, and 9. So when we do this, we're going to have 7 with 3 zeros. We're going to have 3 with 2 zeros. 0, 0, 63 with 1 0, and 27. So we're going to add all these up, we're going to have 7,957. But we know that we're going to have $3 behind the decimal, or 3 numbers behind the decimal. So we're going to have $7.95 and a little extra cents. So that 95, or that 7 is going to make that 5 round up to 6. So we have about $7.96, and that's just for the chicken. But now we're going to make sure we add in that 1 pack of hot dogs that we bought. So $5.95. So when we add these up, we're going to come out to $13. Looks like 91 cents. So that's how much he would pay total. So the 7.3 is the pounds of chicken, and it says each pound of chicken. So you know you're going to be multiplying that 7.3 times $1.09. And he also purchases a pack. A is selling a single pack of hot dogs. So we're only going to add that in one time. Now we're going to look at number 2. Which values in the set satisfy the inequality 1/2 x minus 1 is greater than negative 0.5? So satisfy in this sense is telling us which one makes it true. So we're going to have to replace x 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times with each of these numbers so we can solve this problem. So I'm going to start here. We have 1 divided by 2, so 1/2, negative 2 minus 1 is greater than negative 0.5. So when we solve this, we're going to multiply by the top, divide by the bottom. So 2 times 1 is 2, divided by 2 is 1, and a negative times a positive makes it a negative. So we have negative 1 minus 1 is greater than 0.5, negative 0.5. So what we're going to be left with is negative 2 is greater than negative 0.5. And if we look at a number line, we're going to have 0, 1, negative 1, negative 2, and right here would be negative 0.5, and this would be negative 1.5. So those would be the halfway marks. So if we're looking right here, and we have negative 2, and we have negative 0.5, well, negative 0.5 is bigger because it's further to the right. So this is saying that negative 2 is bigger, so that's not correct. So negative 2 does not satisfy the equation. And if you're wondering how negative 1 minus 1 came out to negative 2, well, if we start at negative 1 and go backwards 1, we end up at negative 2. So we know now that negative 2 doesn't work, and now I'm going to try replacing x with negative 1. So we have 1/2 times negative 1 minus 1 is greater than negative 0.5. So multiply by the top. Negative 1 times 1 is negative 1, divided by 2 is negative 0.5, minus 1 whole is greater than negative 0.5. So if we start at negative 0.5 and go back 1 whole, we'll end up at negative 1.5. So we'll be left with negative 1.5 is greater than negative 0.5. And if we look at that, negative 1.5 is further to the left than negative 0.5, so it's not bigger. So once again, this is not true. So negative 1 does not work either. So now we're going to try replacing x with 0. So we have 1 divided by 2 times 0 minus 1 is greater than negative 0.5. So multiply by the top. 0 divided by 1 is, or 0 times 1 is 0. Divided by 2 is 0. So 0 minus 1 is greater than negative 0.5. So if we start at 0 and subtract 1, we'll be at negative 1 is greater than negative 0.5. So once again, negative 1 is still to the left of negative 0.5. So that means it's still smaller than negative 0.5. This says negative 1 is greater, but that's not true, so I'm going to go ahead and mark that off. Next, we're going to replace x with 1. So we have 1/2 times 1 minus 1 is greater than negative 0.5. So multiply by the top. 1 times 1 is 1, divided by the bottom is 0.5, minus 1 is greater than negative 0.5. So if we're going to start at 0.5, which is right here, halfway in between 0 and 1, and we minus 1 whole, we're going to be at negative 0.5. So negative 0.5 is greater than negative 0.5. In this case, we know that negative 0.5 is not greater than negative 0.5 because they're equal, and this doesn't have the or equal to sign, so I know that this is also incorrect. Next, I'm going to replace x with 2. So what I'm going to be left with is 1/2 times 2 minus 1 is greater than negative 0.5. So 2 times 1 is 2, divided by 2 is 1, minus 1 is greater than negative 0.5. 0 is greater than negative 0.5. Well, as we can see, 0 is to the right of negative 0.5, which means 0 is bigger than negative 0.5, which means this is true. So the only number that's going to satisfy this equation or be true in this equation would be answer choice 2. And lastly, I'm going to look at problem number 3. Sarah builds 500 cars in 10 days. How many cars can she build in 2.5 days? So this is a ratio question. So what we know is that we have cars and we have days, but the one that we know both of is that we know the days. So we're going to set up our ratio. We have 500 cars, and that's going to take us 10 total days. Over here, we know that the days is going to be 2.5. So we have to find out how many cars we have. So what we're going to do is we have to figure out what this proportionality is. What happens right here? How can we get from 10 to 2.5? So the way we're going to do that, if it's not an easy number for us, is we're going to take the 2 that we know and divide them. So we're going to take 10, and we're going to divide that by 2.5. And you should remember last year I said we can't divide with the decimal here. We can't divide with the decimal in this spot. So what we do is we have to move this decimal over. And if I move the decimal over here, I also have to move it over here. So really what I'm going to have is 100 divided by 25. So how many times can 25 go into 1? 0. How many times can 25 go into 10? 0. And how many times can 25 go into 100? Well, it's 25, 50, 75, 100, so 4 times. And that's our proportionality. So we know that 25, or basically 10 divided by 4 will give us 2.5. So to find out how many cars she can make, we're also going to have to divide that by 4. So we'll have 500 divided by 4, and that will give us the amount of cars she can build. 4 goes into 5 one time. 4 goes into 10 two times. And 4 goes into 20 5 times. So the amount of cars that she can build in 2.5 days is 125 cars. So you're going to go ahead and do the same things on problems 4, 5, and 6. You're going to practice your multiplication with decimals. You're going to practice solving inequalities. And you're going to practice using ratios. Alright, so on number 6, the class took a survey on their favorite type of chip. If this rate continues, how many will like Cheetos if 90 students are surveyed? Well, right now, our current rate is we have 4 Cheetos over how many total kids? So 10, 17, 20. So here's our current rate. We have to find out when there's 90 total kids. So how can we get from 20 to 90? And then use that as your proportionality. Alright, good luck.